Welcome to Designer Anastasia. Today we're going to make a decorative logo tote bag, and it's going to look something like this. We're going to put all these fun decorative stitches on it, and then you can choose to put your name or a phrase, and it can say anything you'd like. My favorite thing about this bag is the straps. Check them out. They say Anastasia Chatzka on them. You can make your straps say anything you would like. Like cats are awesome, Anastasia rules, you know, just my faves. The first thing you're gonna need to make this amazing tote bag is your pattern. You're gonna create the pattern, and there's detailed instructions down below on how to create it. In fact, you can find detailed instructions on how to create this entire bag. They're in the same place as the instructions for the pattern. You're gonna have 3 pattern pieces. You're gonna have a long one for the strap, which is gonna be cut 4. You're gonna have a big one with these notched out areas, which is gonna be cut 1. And then you're gonna have a pocket pattern, which is gonna be cut 2. If you made them correctly, they should look something like this. Supply list time. So you're gonna need lots of threads. You're gonna need a matching thread for your fabric. I'm gonna be using this golden wool for my tote bag, so I have a matching golden color. And then if you're gonna be doing all the stitches I'm doing on my tote bag, which you don't have to, you could also use this as a simple tote bag pattern, but I'm gonna choose 3 different threads so I can change my decorative stitches and make them look awesome. And then I'm gonna use 2 different decorative threads. And then for my bias binding on the straps, I'm actually gonna use this grosgrain ribbon. And then you're gonna need 1 button for your pocket. And I think that wooden green button looks pretty rad with that yellow. On your supply list is also 5 different decorative feet. So you don't have to use these, but they're gonna make your life so much easier and quicker and make this project go by right away. I'll be using the multi-line decorative foot. I'll be using the edge joining foot. I'll be using the 7-hole cording foot. I'll be using the open toe foot, and one of my favorites, the bias binder. The first thing you're gonna do is cut out your pattern. So grab your rotary cutter and let's start cutting. The first piece I'm gonna cut out is the body of the bag, and it's cut 1. After you cut it out, it should look something like this. Next, we're gonna cut out the pocket, and it's cut 2 because it's self-lined. Now I have 2 pockets, yay! Next, we're gonna cut out the strap, and it's cut 4. Okay, so all your straps cut out, you should have 4 of these little dangly pieces. Let's strap it up and start sewing. Before we go over to the sewing machine, we're going to need to draw a diagonal line across the front of our bag. We're going to use this as a guide for our text. So take a long ruler and line it from corner to corner of the bag. And once you feel like it's in a good spot and it's lined up, take your chalk and go ahead and run it down the ruler. And now you should have a diagonal line going across the front of your bag. And we are going to use this as a guide for our decorative stitches, so that way they end up perfectly across our bag. Before we stitch out our font, you want to switch your foot and put on the open toe foot. The reason I like using this foot is so that way I can see the font when it starts stitching out. And so this is nice and open right here in between the feet. Now I'm using the Designer Epic sewing machine. If you are as well, it's gonna be the green A tab. You're gonna go ahead and hit this and select one of your fonts. And if you're not using this machine, go ahead and find the fonts on your machine. I'm going to use the block alphabet. So go ahead and hit that. And now down here, we're going to have our alphabet keypad, and I'm going to type in Sew Anastasia space. Perfect. Now I want to also leave a few more spaces before it starts stitching out Sew Anastasia again and again and again. So make sure you add some spaces in there. And now we are good to go. So let's stitch it out. So I have my chalk line lined up into the center of my foot. I'm gonna use this line as a guide for my text. So it's gonna be stitching Sew Anastasia right down this chalk line. Let's go ahead and check it out. Okay, so we have completed Sew Anastasia across the bag diagonally. Ah, how amazing! Sew Anastasia, Sew Anastasia. We are one step closer to finishing our tote bag. Now we're gonna go ahead and do Sew Anastasia down these two straps. Now your strap should look something like this. Mine says Sew Anastasia. What do yours say? Now we're gonna go ahead and put on the 7-hole cording foot, and we're gonna do a decorative stitch over the cord. So I have my foot on the machine, and now you need to go ahead and get your decorative cords. We're going to be using 3 of them, even though it's a 7-hole. You don't have to use all 7. So I'm doing a green, a gold, and a green. And the first step is feeding it through the hole in the foot. Sometimes it's easier too if you take off the foot, and then you can go ahead and thread it. So we have a green. Now we're gonna do a gold. Okay. Now we're gonna go ahead and put the other green in. Okay, so one more green on this side. Let's twist it a little. Perfect. Okay, so now that I have my 3 cords on there, I'm gonna go ahead and slip this foot back on. And you're also gonna have a thread in the top of your machine. I'm using regular machine thread. I'm using something that contrasts. So we're gonna take this thread, pull it to the back, take your other 3 cords, pull it to the back, and now we are ready to start cording. I'm going to be using stitch 12 in the heirloom stitches, but you can use any decorative stitch you want over the cord as long as it's gonna hold the cording in place. So go ahead, hit 12 if you're following with me exactly, and let's put our bag under the machine. So now when you're doing this, you wanna make sure you line up your foot with the top of the text, and we're gonna use that as a guide. So go ahead, hold your cords so that they don't slip, but don't hold them tight, just enough to keep them so they're not getting tangled. Okay, so make sure you hit the fixed stitch, that way you get a knot on the back of it. If your machine does not have fixed, make sure you back stitch. And now we're going to do it on the bottom of the text. Go ahead, pull it out, cut it, and let's check it out. It looks amazing. I love it. It is, as one might say, Sew Anastasia. Now we're gonna go ahead and do the decorative cording foot right below the text. Now that we're done, go ahead and pull it out. We're gonna finish doing the rest of the decorative stitches. So we are gonna change the foot, so go ahead and pop this foot off, and you can cut the threads, and we're good. Now we're gonna go ahead and put on the multi-line decorative foot. And this is gonna help us line up our decorative stitches perfectly. Now I'm gonna go ahead and switch my stitch to 29, which is a bow. I love bows so much, so cute. And we are in the heirloom stitches still. So 29, bow, let's do it. Now this grid on the foot is gonna help us keep everything even. So I'm gonna line up the edge of my decorative corded stitch with the first red line to the left of the foot. So go ahead and start there. Now you're going to do the exact same thing on the other side. You're just going to use the grid on the other side of the foot. Woohoo! Just finished the bows. They're looking amazing. Now I'm going to switch back to my pink thread and do one more decorative stitch on the outside of the bows. And I'm going to keep this foot on so that way I can use the grid to make sure all my stitches come out nice and even. Now I switched back to pink thread and I'm still in the heirloom stitches, and I'm going to pick these cute little hearts, which is number 34. Now use your grid to line this up and go ahead and stitch your last row of decorative stitches. Perfect, now that we're done with our first row of hearts, let's go ahead and do one more row of hearts on the other side, and then we'll be done with all of our decorative stitches. Now that our decorative stitches are done, we can go ahead and sew our pocket together. Beautiful. Now that we've finished the outside of the bag, the decorative stitches, you're gonna go ahead and put on your matching thread for your fabric. You're gonna switch back to the A or the B foot, which is just a regular foot, and we're gonna take both of our pocket pieces and we're gonna place them right sides together, and we are going to stitch all the way around them, but we are going to leave a 2-inch opening on one of the long sides. So now I'm going to back stitch, I'm going to cut my thread, and I'm going to leave that opening. So I'm going to go down a couple inches, and let's start again. When you get to the corner, make sure your needle is in the fabric, your foot is lifted up, and you pivot and turn your fabric. Back stitch or fix, and that is finished. Now we're going to go ahead and clip our corners and turn our pocket right side out. Now we're going to go ahead and clip the corners. We want to get the bulky fabric out of there so they're nice and pointy. This is a really thick wool, so I'm actually going to go ahead and clip a little closer as well. Okay, so do that to all 4 of your corners. Brilliant. Now we want to go ahead and turn your pocket right side out through the opening that you left. Mine closed up a little more than I wanted to, so I'm just going to stitch it, or rip it open. Okay. Now you want to go ahead and make sure you push your corners out. Here we go, we're looking good. So I want you to go over to the iron and iron this pocket nice and flat. Get all those seams that are getting squished in there out. Go ahead and roll it in between your fingers and make sure that seam pops out. Now that we have it ironed, I'm gonna go ahead and sew across one of the long edges, and it's going to be the one that doesn't have the opening. Perfect. Now your pocket should look something like this. We have the top stitch at the top of the pocket opening, and the hole that you turned it right side out with is right here. Now this is gonna get closed up when we sew the pocket on the bag, and we end up doing an edge stitch and a top stitch all the way around the edges. Now we're gonna go ahead and make a buttonhole on our pocket. So you're gonna have to go ahead and place your button and measure it and figure out how big you're gonna need your buttonhole. Once you've figured out your buttonhole size, go ahead and line up the edge of your buttonhole foot with the edge of the fabric. And if you're using the Viking buttonhole automatic foot, we're gonna make sure that white line is lined up with that white area. And this is gonna sew us a beautiful buttonhole. Look how fast and easy this gorgeous buttonhole was. Perfect. Now let's go ahead, lay our bag out, and place our pocket. You're gonna wanna pin this on. So I'm gonna place my pocket 3 inches down from the top. You can place your pocket wherever you'd like. And now we are going to pin it. So make sure it's center and go ahead and pin it around 3 edges. Fabric is really thick, so I'm having a hard time with the pins here. Let me get a different pin for that. There we go. Just make sure it's flat still. I'm actually going to put one in the middle here so it doesn't move. Okay, so that should be enough pins. You just need a few pins to hold it in place, so let's go ahead and put our edge joining foot on and sew around the edge of this pocket. We're gonna go ahead and put on this edging foot here, and it's gonna make sewing around the pocket so much easier. So I'm going to line up the metal edge of this foot with the edge of my pocket, and it's gonna help me make a perfect 1/4 inch top stitch. We're going through this thick fabric like butter. Make sure your needle's in, your foot's lifted, and you can turn your fabric. We are all done with the pocket, and it should look something like this. Next, we're gonna prepare your straps. You wanna take one strap with your text on it and one without. And we're gonna place them together. So you wanna place the strap with no text on the back of the one with the text. And make sure the right side of your text is out and not the wrong side. And we're gonna baste these 2 layers together. So I've got my 2 layers, and now we're gonna baste these together on the edge. I'm gonna go all the way around on 4 sides, so when you get to the corner, make sure your needle's in and you pivot. Now that we have the straps basted together, we're going to bias bind the edges. You wanna grab your bias binding foot, and it's gonna look something like this. Go ahead and just snap it in. Nice and easy, and there we go. Now our bias binding foot's attached. You're gonna go ahead and feed your bias binding through the center of this foot, and it's gonna fold it as you sew. So there's a little section on the other side of the foot, and you're gonna take your strap and feed it right into the middle of it. So now when you sew, it's going to feed your strap in the center, and it's gonna wrap the bias binding around the edge of the strap. So go ahead and make those straps fancy. So I finished the straps, and your straps should look something like this with the bias binding on them. I chose to do grosgrain on one side and a cotton bias on the other. I was just trying some new things out, and then as you can see, the back is nice and solid, and we don't have any text on the back. Okay, so now we are going to sew the body of the bag. So go ahead and place right sides together, and we're gonna sew up the side seams. So we're gonna place our pocket to our embroidery, our decorative stitches, and now we're going to sew down the side seam. Now that I have one side done, we're gonna go ahead and do the other side. Now your side seam should look something like this. Next we're gonna go ahead and sew together these corners. So you're gonna take it, open it up, and make sure it looks something like this. And you wanna make sure that the seam is pressed open when we sew it. So we're just gonna sew a 1/2 inch across the corner. Now you're gonna go ahead and do the same thing to the other side. Line those corners up, make sure your seam is flat, and go ahead and sew a 1/2 inch. Now that we have our bag sewn up, it should look something like this on the inside of it. So your bottom corners here are going to look like that. And then when we turn it right side out, this is the exciting part that we've been waiting for. Now your bag should actually start to take shape. So side with the pocket and side with our super fun stitches. So now what we're gonna do is go ahead and turn it wrong side out. We're gonna go over to the ironing board, and I want you to iron up your bag 1 inch, because then we're gonna top stitch around the outside of the edge and attach our straps, and then we're done. Now that we have the edge folded under, we're gonna go ahead and top stitch down the edge about 1/4 inch away. Now we have the top of our bag sewn down, and yours should look something like this. You want to make sure to line up your straps right outside where the pocket is. Make sure the wrong side of your strap, or the inside of your strap, is actually facing the inside of the bag, so that way the text on your straps is going to be on the outside. Let's go ahead and sew in a square. I'm going to sew across the top first. Down one side, across the bottom, and up the other side. And if you want, you can go ahead and put a slash through it. And then it should look something like this. Go ahead, just trim up your extra threads, and do that to all 4 sides. The last step is sewing on the button. If you don't know how to sew on a button, check out my YouTube video on how to hand sew a button. So you want to make sure you place your button right behind the buttonhole, so that way it's going to line up with it. And go ahead and make sure your button is nice and sturdy. I like to go in and out probably 4 or 5 times. Voila! Our button! We did it! Our bag is done. We have all these really cool decorative stitches. We have our text on here, Sew Anastasia. We have a pocket with a button, and we have bias-bound straps. So fun. I'm ready for fall with my new tote bag. Tag yours, Sew Anastasia. Thanks so much for watching Sew Anastasia today. If you have any questions or comments, leave them below. I'll get back to you as soon as I can. And as always, follow me on Instagram at Sew Anastasia. If you're in Chicago, check out my boutique or take a sewing class with me. Information on all of that below. Thanks so much for watching, and happy sewing. Bye!